So, good evening. How are you, Bassey? It's great to be here this evening.
Doing good. Good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. And I'm delighted because we're recording this session so that we can be able to make it available to other people who would be wanting to listen to this after now. So, good afternoon to all those who are already in the room. Thank you very much for showing up. This is Toluwani Akahome. I'm the founder of Urgenity Africa. And what we do at Urgenity Africa is really about supporting the growth and development of entrepreneurs from new communities. So if you are an entrepreneur, an aspiring entrepreneur, someone who's interested in starting their own business, finding out more about how you can become economically independent or well integrated in Ireland, and all things about entrepreneurship, business, enterprise development. That's what we'd like to do. That's what we like to see. So it is my pleasure to welcome you here tonight to this session. It's a new one. We're just running 10 sessions of Meet the Expert. And on Meet the Expert, what we really want to do is get somebody who is an expert, who is really knowledgeable, an experienced entrepreneur into the room and get them to answer the myriad of questions you might have about entrepreneurship in general, but in particular, entrepreneurship, starting your own business in the Republic of Ireland. So it is my pleasure to welcome tonight Bassey Duke, is my brother, but is also a well-experienced entrepreneur in his field. I'm going to leave him to introduce himself later on, but it is my pleasure to welcome him into this webinar session, whatever you want to call it, but the time together, this time that we have together, just for about an hour or so. It will be an opportunity for you to listen to him. And if you want to, of course, ask him questions about the areas of interest to you. So while we were trying to get the feedback from people, a few things came up. People sent us what they really wanted to know about. And I'm just going to say some of those things. I'm going to just read them out, and then I'm going to leave the stage for Bassey, and he's going to do his thing, answering questions from those that I'm going to highlight, answering those questions that came up, but also he has prepared slides so that he can share with us on the things that I'm going to read out, because those are the questions that we got wind of in terms of what people are interested in. So questions people said they wanted clarity in relation to creative services, business website, an application for registration, booking and payments. They wanted information on how to get funds and support to improve the business. Now, that was a lot of interest in funding in an Irish environment and funding in general. And other people wanted to know how they could start their own business. What were the steps to starting a business, steps to starting a new business management, and how to utilize social media for business, and also how to access this also funding from local and international funding organizations. Then there were questions about scaling up, so business growth, business development, and also corporate payroll taxation. So it's a wide range of questions, and we mightn't be able to answer all of those questions today, but certainly we'll do much we can. Bassey will, and then we can follow up with people then afterwards if you leave your details, and we can connect with you and we can follow up with you. So thank you once again, and over to you, Bassey. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Toluwani. Thanks for the kind words, and welcome everyone. So I split today into 3 sections. So one, I'll talk briefly of myself. I will then go through the slides I've put together to answer the question I've been asked already. And then at the end, any additional question, by all means, ask me. If there's nothing I can answer on the webinar, I will make a point and then add that to the slide deck. So when the slide deck goes to everyone, it has all the questions answered. Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen. Hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So you can still see my screen, yeah? Okay. So
yes, we can see it in slideshow now, yes.
Okay, cool. So talk brief of my professional journey. So my name is Bassey. I really come from Nigeria, and I've been fortunate enough to work for various multinationals, and that was prior to me set up my own company, Prune Consulting. So about 5 years and 8 months ago, I set up Prune with intention of using all my experiences from different companies to now impact, be it SMEs or be it multinationals. Playing in 4 spaces: so supply chain, so that's all around inventory, getting goods to customers; logistics, which is mainly transport and warehousing and customs; procurement, in terms of how to buy; and then the 4th one being leadership. Through my career, I've also pursued professional certifications. So, for example, when you think of procurement, the biggest body is a body called SIPS, and I am certified as SIPS. Same as logistics, which is CILT, and CILT, I've been the vice chair for Eastern Section in Ireland. Why am I sharing this? Because I think it's important that whatever path that we take, we should also pursue our different professional certifications in whatever we do. I think that's key and critical. And then also get involved in mentoring and coaching individuals and companies, and that's something I really cherish. So I'll skip this slide for now. So that's some of the awards that we've won. And what's our mission? High level. Sustainability. So it's all about providing businesses with sustainable solutions, training, helping companies become more profitable, and innovation. So as a company, the 4 things that we try to do. Okay. So when I now think of success, I think of 4 pillars, and I thought it's important for me to start with this before I then dive into the questions. So when I think of success, I think of 1, relationships. So as an entrepreneur, even as a professional, what are those key relationships we need to nurture and develop? So be it as a business owner, it's my customers, it's my staff, it's my supplier, right? As a professional, it's your line manager, it's your peers, right? It's also your allies within the companies that you work with to ensure that, look, when we get to places like calibration, there's people in the room who are able to speak about the good work that you do. So relationship is very, very key. Also, as a business owner, it's also good for me to develop relationship with other business owners like myself. Then equipping. This to me is all about being the best at what you do. So as a business owner, as a professional, the process of learning never stops. We need to always know what's trending now, also trending in the future. Give an example. 2 days ago, I went for a conference talking about metaverse. You can ask, okay, why is metaverse important? Because at some point we are going to delve into the metaverse. So what am I sharing is the fact that, look, we always have to keep sharpening ourselves and equipping ourselves with more information. Then attitude. Your attitude determines your altitude. So it's all about your mindset. How are you thinking from a business perspective? Are you already winning the battle in the mind in terms of what you want to do? And last bit is then leadership. So as a leader, we need to develop our leadership competence. We ought to develop not just ourselves, but also people around us. And that is mainly our teams. So with that, I will then dive into the questions. So the first question was all around, creative service and business website, application for registration, booking, payment. So some of the points I answered, some of it I didn't fully understand the context. So when I think of websites, they are platforms like GoDaddy, Wix, Squarespace, and it's important to use these because they are pretty simple and they're content managed. So in that case, easy to create a website. Then I know the person spoke about payments. So when you think of online payments, it's definitely like to Stripe and PayPal. Then if you look for something that's in person, I'll recommend SumUp because SumUp has a pay-as-you-go model, which means that if for a month you're not transacting anything, there's no fee that you pay on a monthly basis. Okay. Then from an accounting perspective, we use a company called Finero. And why I find them good is that they would help you in terms of, because what's key when you set up your company is what setup do you want? Do you want to be sole trader? Do you want to be limited liability? Do you want to sit in an umbrella company? And these are things that are important for you when you set up your company. So understand, okay, what structure do you want? And they then do your monthly accounts, create your company documents and do everything in regards to, keeping you compliant. The bit I wasn't able to get some more context was around registration process and fees. So I guess the question was around, as a clinical dietitian or nutritional health care, what process of registering within the various bodies. So that's outstanding for me to come back on that question to look at, okay, what bodies are there for this person to register with? What is the fees to those registration, right? And, is there anything or exam that is required before they can go into these practices? So that's an action for me to still come back on more context to that question. Okay. Next question, funding. So this is the one that I spent a good chunk of my time putting slides together, because I think this is very important, because as any business, we need to look at, okay, how is this business going to be funded? So I spent more time on the Irish context, but I'm also going to come back and look at the EU and the African context. So that's action for me. So when I think of Ireland, there's something called LEO, which is a local enterprise office. So each, I guess, county has their own. For example, I'm based in Fingal, so Fingal has its own LEO office. And this is where I recommend as your first point of call once you set up your business, because LEO have grants available, but also LEO also have mentoring available, which means that when you go to your LEO, you can talk about your business, so they can give you their thoughts, their ideas. You can have one-to-one mentoring with them. Okay. There we go. A level higher, you now have Enterprise Ireland, which is all around Ireland. So these are more like, I guess, the large enterprises, and they do funding also. And then the third bit is an Intertrade Airline. So Intertrade Airline is more so for if you're now thinking towards exporting. But they are big on promoting businesses which export a lot. So exporting could be your services, exporting could be your goods. Then obviously you go to traditional other lending, which is like your bank. You've also got Microfinance Ireland, which is more geared towards SMEs from a lending perspective. You also have peer-to-peer lending, whereby you're lending from your peers, and then you also got investors. So these are the different instruments at which you can get funding or cash injection to your businesses. Each one has its own pros and cons. So for example, grants typically are free, but I put an asterisk there. What I mean is that typically you don't have to pay back the grant that is given to you, but you have to fulfill all the obligations that are stipulated in the grant when you get the grant. So if you get a grant for example, online trading, which is to do with creating a website, you have to demonstrate that the fund has indeed been used to create your website versus the fund being used to create something else. Okay? When you think of an investor is great, but they now own part of your company. So you got to be careful when it comes to investor, because now you're now diluting the shares that you have in your company. So it's a great way of raising capital, but it's just for you to understand that when you go down out of investor, you're now giving out a piece of your company. So a good example is, I'm sure everyone has watched Shark Tank or the online Dragon's Den, where they come and pitch for money, and then with the money they get, you now give a stake of your business. Going down the list, so typically your peer-to-peer lending, the interest rate is typically higher, but it's easier for you to get access to the money than, say, through your bank. Because typically, to get money from the bank, you have to demonstrate in most cases that you'll be trading for some time. And then once you've demonstrated that, then the bank is more likely to then give you funding for the business that you want. And microfinance is more geared to SME. Okay. So let's go deeper into it. So now let's do with LEO. So one of the grants they have is what's called feasibility grant. So give example. So if I set up a business and, for example, I wanted to sell shoes, for example, okay, I can then go to LEO and say, look, I'm not 100% sure what the market looks like for shoes, right? I need to engage maybe someone from marketing, engage a consultant who can then map out what the market looks like. So this is all around market research. And then based on that, we then be able to understand, okay, what shoes are in demand? Is it, for example, is it black shoes for men? Is it a different color shoe for women? And for those demographics, what is the buying pattern? That then enables me to now be able to plan my business case accordingly, knowing what the market wants, and then being able to fulfill what the market wants. So this grant typically is 50% of the investment of a maximum of 15,000. For example, if I needed 30,000, what that means, I bring 15, yearly brings 15, and then with that, I have 30,000 to then go and do this feasibility grant. Okay? That's the first one. The second one is then priming grant. So this is available to your micro enterprise. So if you remember, there is micro, there is small, then there's medium. So what determines your size is typically your number of staff and your turnover, which is why you can see up to 10 people. So if I'm employing 11 people and I'm within 18 months of running my business, I can't apply for this grant. So the first application is this can only be requested within my first 18 months of trading. The second stipulation, I need to employ less than 10 people, right? And then they would match 50% up to 150,000. So who is it targeted towards? If I'm manufacturing and I want to export externally, so for example, if I was making shoes, so let's go back to the shoe example, and I saw that there was a great market in the US and I wanted to now trade and export the shoes to the US based on the grant I got before, which now shows me the market that there's a big market in the US and I can actually get introduced to the buyers in the US. Then I would answer to earlier and say, look, there's great opportunity in the US, there's market size opportunity. I can actually get to speak with the buyers and there's a high propensity that this would convert. Then earlier would then give me 50% of what that cost is up to a maximum of 150 from their end, which means that if the cost is 300,000, they'll give me 150, I bring 150, and then we start the expansion. Okay, does that make sense? Then the next one is now business expansion. So this is now after 18 months, right? So remember the first one was within the first 18 months. So now if I've gotten past 18 months mark, I can now apply for the business expansion. But similarly, it's limited to employing up to 10 people. So there's a cap there. If I employ more than 10 people, then I can't get access to this grant. And then similarly, it's for manufacturing or international trading. And it's 50% up to a maximum of 150,000 euros. Okay, so that's business expansion. So I know one of the questions was asked about scaling. So if, for example, I wanted to scale, this is one grant that will help me to be able to now scale and then employ more. Okay. Then there's the online trading voucher. So this is 50% of the investment up to a maximum of 2,500. So the prerequisite is that you have to attend an online webinar from your LEO to explain the nuances behind this grant. Caps are, I can't employ more than 10 people. My turnover has to be less than 2 million. I'm going to be trading for at least 6 months. So I need to have my business 6+ months old before I can get access to this. So this typically is good because it enables me, for example, if I wanted to redo my website, if I wanted to open an online training website, I can avail of this voucher, which gives me ability to now get someone to now either redo my website or create a brand new website for me so that I can now maybe sell courses online. I can now have an online presence. So if today I had no website, I had no online e-commerce presence, I can then use it to now sell things online versus just having a physical store. Okay. Then the next one is then called the technical assistance for micro exporters. So this grant is available if I want to now start exporting. Okay. So it would help in terms of my operational costs, right? It's 50% with a maximum of 2,500, right? I then need to demonstrate that my product, there is a market for it, right? That there's opportunity for me now to trade internationally, right? And I can't receive this fund if I've received the fund before or received similar fund from a different source. So this is more geared towards micro exporters. So micro meaning the size and the revenue, as we mentioned before. So less than 10 people can get access to this grant. Okay. Then within the LA, there's something called an agile fund. So this is more towards specific development projects whereby we want to improve the product, we want to improve the process. So for example, if I wanted to embark on something, so if I was a manufacturer, I wanted to embark on a way to maybe reduce my cost through, lean principles, I can get access to this and then run the project, which then reduces my overall cost base and then makes me more attractive and then makes my product being able to sell more because I can now reduce the price. And if I'm able to reduce the price, I can then potentially sell more. And this has 50% up to a total of 300,000. Okay. And there's a lot of information I'm throwing at you guys, but I'm also here to answer any question after the webinar. Is there something else you need clarification on? So that is the LEO. So now let's come to Enterprise Ireland. So Enterprise Ireland have various crisis funds. So one of them is around business financial planning. So good example would have been Brexit. So during Brexit, most companies had to review their financial planning. Reason being is that, as you all know, overnight, if I'm buying from the UK, I now need to do paperwork to import. I also now need to now pay duties which I didn't pay before. And then vice versa, if I'm now shipping to sell to the UK overnight, I now need to also do paperwork, and then my selling cost has to increase because there'll now be duties the other way around. So the whole point of the financial ground that will now allow me to now look at my business and now say, okay, based on Brexit, this is what the impact to my business would be. And me now having that information now knows, okay, this is what I need to do to now compensate for that. So does that mean I need to, one, increase my price to counteract the increase in the import side and the increase in the export side, right? Or two, do I look at other ways to reduce my cost, i.e., instead of sourcing from the UK, can I source from another EU country? Because in that instance, I don't pay any duty, right? So this fund then gives you access to now be able to look at your finance and then do scenarios and now look at, okay, how do I now ultimately reduce my cost? Okay. So this is for the carrying on the example on Brexit. So this is now saying, okay, look, now this is also a grant that enables me to now say, okay, now that I know the challenges, this is what I now plan to do. So now using this grant and now plan for, okay, now I know to carry on the Brexit theme, I now know that it's going to impact my cost base and it's going to impact my selling potential because now both are on the up. So now I have to put a plan in place, and then this grant helps me put the plan in place. So whether it's, as I said, sourcing from the EU to keep my costs low, or whether for me to now, whether I now look at new markets beyond the UK, i.e. selling also into the EU or selling into the US, now compensate for the fact that now my profit has been eroded because of Brexit. Okay. And then this is also linked. So all three funds are kind of, or grants are all linked to the Brexit topic. So this is now looking at, I guess, post Brexit, how do I now grow my market, be it growing it within, selling more into the UK, or do I now look at diversification, i.e. new opportunities? I think what's quite interesting that all the Enterprise Ireland grants are all driven by what we saw with Brexit, which showed that Brexit did have quite a big impact on the Irish market. Because then most of you know, but I think the stats was something around, so I remember looking at this, 80% of Irish exports, sorry, let me phrase it. 90% of Irish exports go via the UK, whether they're destined for UK or destined for the EU. Then out of the 90% that go via the UK, I think about 6% of them ends up in UK. So UK was Ireland's biggest importer and biggest exporter. So this is why this grant came about. Okay, that makes sense? Okay, cool. We now come to Intertrade Ireland. So Intertrade Ireland, I could only find two grants that they had, but these are more equity grants for seeds, which means that this is more from an investor perspective, which means for a new company, yes, you can get access to 50 to, $500,000, but that is more seed money, which means that you will give up a portion of your company to get access to this grant. But this is more difficult at this stage because it means that your company must have been valued and your valuation needs to exceed these grant amounts. So these grants are more difficult to get because for you to get this grant amount, your company must be, for example, fintech, easy for fintech to get, because fintech can be valued at millions and millions of euros, which means that either to get seeds of €500,000, that's a small bit of the equity they're giving up. So this is available, but it's not likely that we have access to this except you're in that fintech space whereby you can have a higher valuation that justifies you then getting this money from an investment perspective. Okay. Any questions? Okay.
No, it's quite detailed.
So where can I be funded to start my business? So this I already covered in part 2. So I didn't get an answer because I already spent time with all the funding. But as I said, with the funding I looked at, it was more Irish centric. But as I said, my action was also look at it from a UK perspective, EU perspective, and also look at it from Africa perspective. See, okay, what funds are available for businesses which also are in these countries and territories? Because if we look at Hedge Unity, I know most of the members come from not just Ireland, but the UK and EU and also African members are part of the Hedge Unity membership. Yeah.
There's a question here actually on EU funding.
Okay.
The chat room. So
yes. So Jadra, I will come back to an EU funding. So that's one thing I've not had time to look into detail, but I'll come back to you. I'll come back to not just you, but to everybody. So I'll update the slide and have EU funding on it. Okay. So steps to set up a new business. So I thought the best way to attack this was more ask questions. And then from that question, have a discussion to explain what's important for setting up a business. So first question would be, okay, do you have an idea or a product? So idea could be a service, product could be a physical, tangible goods. Okay. Next question is that, do you now know the demand for your product? So i.e., to take, for example, we play in that consulting space whereby it's all around our services are more, saving money to companies. We're trying to say, okay, what does that demand look like? Where does that demand live, right? Do you know your competitors? So for example, in our case, when we come to the procurement consulting, I know what competitors are. When it comes to leadership, I know what competitors are. We've been able to know, okay, who are competitors? What do they do well, right? How can you then differentiate yourself from them, right? What is your unique selling proposal that you're giving to the market that is different from what your competitor is doing? So it could be ease of doing business. It could be the fact that, so in our case, ease of doing business, the fact that, okay, we've got experience and we're practitioners when it comes to, consulting. So, for example, before I became a consultant, I have done this for various multinationals. So I'm not coming from a place of theory, but I've practically negotiated. I've put contracts together. I've saved, by now I've probably saved excess of 100 million euros. So that is all experience that I have. Then the next bit is, do you have a business plan in place? Why have you taken the time to sit down and create a business plan and gone through the different steps that involved in putting the plan together? Okay. Another question is that, do you know the cost to set up a business? And this is one thing I spend a lot of time when I coach people about set up businesses, that there's always a financial cost, which is easy to calculate. There's also a non-financial cost. The non-financial cost in most cases is your time. When you start a business, you need to be willing to put in the time to make sure the business is successful. But to start, you're typically going to have enough funds to employ loads of people. What that means is that most of the tasks falls on you to be done, until the point whereby the company is now turning some profits, then easy for you to now employ people and then have more people on the books, which makes the load lighter. Okay. Then, what is the company structure you're thinking of? So, it could be sole trader, it could be limited liability. Okay. I focus more on this too. I didn't necessarily go into the realms of charity, but you could also set up yourself as a charity, which is non-for-profit. So, one of the differences between sole trader and limited liability is risk. Okay. So, typically, if you're a limited liability, your risk is limited to the company. Typically, with a sole trader, your risk is limited to you. So one we're looking at is that, okay, with a limited liability company, if anything goes wrong, I'm not saying we set up business for things to go wrong, but if anything goes wrong, at least you are limiting your risk, and the risk is sitting within the company versus it's sitting between yourself as a sole trader. Then an important question is, will you get VAT registered? So typically, I think if you're trading, 40,000 or more, it makes sense to be VAT registered. If you have 40,000 or less, probably not. But I think being VAT registered is a good thing because it sets your mind that you plan to grow, and you are now putting steps in place to enable you to grow as a company beyond the threshold. Okay? As a company or individual, do you have a mentor, a coach? I think this is important because being a business owner, in one sense, it can be lonely. So it's good to have someone and people you can talk to, and have someone and people who've been down this path that you're going down, to them speaking to you, speaking to the situation, give you advice, share their learnings, share their failures also, and also having a safe space for you to talk about things that you're going through as a business owner. I also part of any business owner group. This is also important because it's important to also talk to your peers who are not necessarily your competitors, but people you can bounce ideas off, you can speak about what you're going through. Because sometimes, we think what we go through is unique, but there's always a forum that we can also talk to things with other people. One thing I learned early on is marketing. I know sometimes we don't put enough value on marketing. It's important to have a marketing plan. Why? You can have the greatest product or the greatest service, but if nobody knows you, nobody knows about you, then you're not going to create the demand from the customer base. Marketing is one of the top 5 things when you think of set up your own company. Making sure you have a robust marketing plan. How are you going to get to the market? Where are your customers located? How do you engage with your customers? How can your customers even find you? Right. So these are simple questions to ask when you think of setting up your company, so that your customers can actually find you. Then, how could they buyer persona? So coming back to the example I gave you on shoes. So buyer persona is more so me now drilling down to intricate details. Say, okay, my typical buyer is, I'm just making up, Sophie, who's aged 30 years old, for example, right? And lives in Dublin. So based on this question, this is what the persona looks like. This is what the person is looking for. Maybe people looking for red shoes, for example. So if that's the case, then I need to make sure that within my product portfolio, I have what the buyer is looking for. So buyer persona is something that is worthwhile to do because you're not getting into detail to say, okay, this is what my ideal customer should look like. And this is what I need to do to now find this ideal customer. This is where I need to be. This is the pricing point I need to sell it at. And that enables you now improve your customer conversion. Okay. Then, question ask about business management and how to utilize social media. So, it's key to have a social media presence, and the list up there is not exhaustive. There's your LinkedIn, there's your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and. But what I'd also say is that it's for us to understand the different platforms. So LinkedIn is more around businesses. Facebook is more around individual to direct to consumer, right? Same as Instagram. It's for you to understand, okay, what audiences do I find on what platform? What can I create on what platform? So for example, sometimes what works on LinkedIn may not work on Facebook. You also got to understand that, look, my post also has to be diversified to take into account the platform. But also, ultimately, the question is, where is my target customer? So I give example. So when I think of the consulting business, when I think of it from a supply chain, logistics, and procurement perspective, we're looking towards targeting companies. And typically, companies are on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the medium to get the consulting customers. When I think of the leadership side, it could be LinkedIn, also could be Facebook, because leadership could be individual or could be from a company perspective. But for you to now understand, based on the different social media available to me, this is the ones I'm going to put my energy and my power towards now creating content, because the key is creating content and creating content regularly. But also the content has to create value to people. They can't just be sell, sell, sell. I'm good at this. Sometimes all about you bringing value to someone, and that's how the referrals come, right? But what I also say there is that it's not a case of you having to always give all the secret recipes through your content. No, But through your content, if you're able to edify and help people, then that's them people seeing you as a thought leader. Because what you want to always do is in your sphere of influence, you want people to look at you as a thought leader in that field, which means that they see you as a subject matter expert. So, for my example, I want people to see me as when they think of supply chain, logistics, procurement, their first point of call is Bassey, because they know this is who is dominating that sphere. Same as leadership, but it takes time to now build yourself in that subject matter. Then those recommended also like posts from influencers and start developing relationship with influencers. Influencers are people that have a lot of followers, so develop that relationship with them through liking their posts, through commenting on their posts, and as you do that, now people now start to discover you, because now, take an example, I think I have 4,000 followers, but if I now connect with someone that's got 100,000 followers, guess what? More people are now seeing my posts, more people are now engaging my posts, and then I'm able to people to now actually find you. So that's also an important thing to do. So, questions asked around funding, both local and international. As I said, I've done the Irish one, but I'm still going to do the EU, UK, and African one, and then send that to the group. So, somebody asks on scaling up, how to scale up. So, I put down 4 points. I'm going to spend time going to the 4 points. So, if I look at our journey, when we started, obviously, we started with one myself, right? But now we probably have on our books maybe 60, 70 people. Okay? We've been able to scale up. And what are the key things to scaling up? One is having system and processes in place. So having system that you are able to transfer from one person to another, having system that means you can now duplicate efforts. So one good system that I recommend is EOS, and it's a good book called Traction. I'll put the book in the slide for people to get the book. Great book to read. It breaks down into 7 different systems, which is important as an entrepreneur to build these habits into what we do now at an early stage of the business, and then make sure that we are consistent through what's making sure that these things are in place. So what I mean by systems and processes, for example, we have SOPs in place, which are standard operating procedures, which means that if somebody wants to do, what's a good example? If somebody wants to be one of our drivers delivering for us, there's a process in place which says how we want deliveries to be done. And then the drivers have to adhere to that. So what that means is making sure they've got high vis, they've got safety shoes, they've got their seat belts. There's focus on customer engagement when you go to deliver the parcels to the customer. So these are example of things you need to have in place early on to help you when you then want to scale. Okay? Second thing is making sure you have the right team in place. So, recruitment is very, very important, because it's better to get it right at recruitment versus trying to develop the person after recruitment. So spending that time to put down together the job spec, but also, what you want from the person, what kind of person are you looking for to fulfill that job? Okay? And looking for what are the right competencies that you're looking for also for that job. And when they then come on board, is now looking at career progression. So how can they develop themselves within your company? How can they move up within the company? Okay? But making sure that you have those right team in place, be it from a supervisory level or be it from an individual contributor level. Okay? Then you need to have a detailed understanding of your customer base. Because you're trying to scale and expand. Where is expansion going to come from? Is it by expanding within your known market? Is it by expanding by going to new markets and new territories? Is it by expanding by increasing your product portfolio? So try to understand, okay, where is scaling going to come from? Is it by doing more of the same? Or is it by doing something else, i.e. adding complementary products or services to complement what you already do? Which then means that, for example, I have customer A. Today I'm only selling him one thing. If I expand my product portfolio, I can now sell 2, 3 different things to the same customer. Or is it a case of me now looking for new customers in a new territory, new environment? So you try to understand, how is growth going to come? Then the fourth bit I'm putting there is that, as you scale up, you need to have good product management competency in your organization, because you're going to be managing different projects as you're growing, be it systems or processes, be it people or whatnot. You need to make sure that you're going to be able to manage different projects, which helps you grow from where you are, where you need to be. So give me an example. So not this Christmas before this, that is Christmas for 2021. As we went towards Christmas, I think roughly maybe 8 weeks to Christmas. So some people may know, may not know, but one of the things we do is we deliver parcels for Amazon, right? So we primarily deliver parcels for Amazon in Dublin area. I remember that Christmas, they opened a new depot in Limerick, and they came to me and said, look, we need drivers to deliver parcel for them in Limerick. They gave us 1 week, no, they gave us not 1 week, they gave us 3 weeks for us to provide drivers from Dublin to go to Limerick, deliver for them. For the company, I think we grew from 60 to like 120 in 3 weeks, right? That is scaling, right? We had to then manage drivers who were all coming from Dublin to go to Limerick to deliver for them for 7 weeks going to Christmas. And a lot of people know Christmas is Amazon's busiest period. This is where they scale up. This is where they want to make sure every parcel gets delivered in time for Christmas. And without systems, without processes, without right people in place, there's no way we could have done that in 3 weeks. And when I mean right people, it starts from HR hiring the drivers. It then goes to operation, making sure that we put the right people in the right place. We also put the right vans in the right place. You don't run out of vans, and making sure that it's every week, every day. We've got people commuting from Dublin to Limerick, and we still were doing deliveries in Dublin. So it's important, because without having these things in place, opportunities will come, but you're not able to grasp those opportunities. And we did that for 7 weeks, and it was pretty good. Tough, but good. So the last one, I was not 100% sure what the question was about, though, but this was corporate, I think, payroll and taxation, right?
I think that's what the question is about.
Okay. So all I looked at was just taxation from a corporate taxation perspective. So Ireland is good from a corporate tax perspective, because compared to UK and EU, has one of the lowest corporate tax rate of 12.5%. Okay. I think the only country that is lower than Ireland, technically not the EU, would be Switzerland, right? I think Switzerland is lower than Ireland, but that's the only one I know that's lower than Ireland. UK is 19%, but I think from April it's going to go up to 23%. The US corporate tax is one of the most complicated corporate tax I've seen, because you have what's called federal tax, you have state tax, and you have local taxes, which means that if I am in Chicago, I would pay my federal tax, which is 21%. Then there'll be the state of Illinois tax. Then there'll be Chicago tax, which are all different. So the federal remains the same, but the state and local taxes vary from county to county, state to state. Going back to my point. So Ireland is good from a corporate tax perspective. Okay. But if you compare like for like, so let's take UK, for example. If you compare like for like, typically you pay more from a payroll perspective in Ireland than you would do in the UK. Okay, I put a question mark to that. The only place that will be comparable will probably London. London has high cost of living. But if, for example, you are located in, say, Birmingham, for example, yes, you pay a 19%, but labor content in Birmingham will be cheaper than, say, someone working in Ireland. So this is where it's a balancing act to just looking at it purely from a corporation perspective is, looking at your costs, which is higher. Is it more corporate tax, or is it more the labor? typically your corporate tax burden is typically higher than labor content, typically in most cases. So, which is why, surprise, you see most of the tech companies being based in Ireland, having their European or global headquarters here because from a corporate tax perspective, works are cheaper for them. Okay. So I think that was everything I put together from a slide perspective.
Fantastic. Right.
Thanks, everyone. And
Thank you.
any floor is open for additional questions.
Well, thank you, Bassey. That is brilliant.
Sorry.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Who is
So
speaking?
I had a quick
Eva.
question. This is the maybe.
Okay. Hi, Dumebi.
Yeah. Hi, nice to meet you. So I had a quick question, but first of all, thank you so much for the session. I really look forward to getting the slides and deep diving a bit more into what you were talking about. But my question basically is, so I hear a lot about business plans, and I know how crucial it is to starting a company, right? And you mentioned business plans for a brief time there. But I just wanted to ask if we could maybe deep dive a bit into what a successful business plan looks like, right? And like maybe what are the significant aspects to creating one? So I'm asking this because there's so many, when you go on Google, there's so many templates you can find out there, right? But I would really love to get an insight from someone who is definitely running a successful business. So I know this is very crucial to starting a business. So if you could maybe just give a bit more insight in that regards. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dumebi. I will not do enough justice on the call on the webinar now, but I'll touch upon some highlights, right? And what I'll try to do is I would try to send a template through, which is a good template to help people put a business plan together. So what are the highlights? So your business plan is basically your best understanding of what the first, I guess, depending on how long, what time horizon you look at, 1 to 3 years of a business will look like, right? So in there will be a set of assumptions that you're going to make, right? But your assumption has to be based on research, right? The research being things like, what's the market size, what's the market opportunity, how much of that do you think you can realistically penetrate, right? And that would then help you look at the sales side. So typically, in a business plan, the operational costs would typically be more accurate, but the sales side is where a lot of business plans struggle. Whereby, how do you now forecast sales? How do you now know, how many products or services you're gonna make? So, to that end, it's also an evolving document. What that means is that your first type of business plan needs to be reviewed as you go through the business, because this will change once you start trading and seeing maybe some assumptions are correct, some assumptions are not correct. Maybe it's going to take you more time to convert. But the starting point of it has to be a base of research by you going to the market. And going to market could mean desktop study, i.e. Googling stuff. Part of it could mean having focus groups with teams of people to get their ideas around your product and get them to engage the product and services, then give their own opinion and views. Part of it involves looking at your competitors, seeing what they do, what kind of revenue are they getting, right? All this added together and gives you a flavor of, okay, what will my company look like going forward? But as I said, the sales bit will be one that will be the least accurate because, we're given a best guess of what the future looks like, and we don't really know because we not started trading. But as we get past month 3, month 4, your business plan becomes more accurate because now you've actually traded, you've now seen, okay, maybe this assumption is correct. This market is more open to accepting my service or product versus what I predicted it to be. Yeah. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, absolutely. That definitely helped.
But maybe what I would probably suggest is maybe we do a session on just business plans. I think it's a very important piece because this is the foundation of your business is how do I put this plan together? How do I make sure I capture the most important, crucial points?
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. We can certainly look at doing a session of business plans. And what I've found, my experience is that a lot of people when it comes to the financial projections of the business plan, they really struggle there as well. So that would be something that we probably will do an extended session on, where we will take people step by step through the financial projections. But we'll be in touch with you about that since we have your email address.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thanks.
So is there any question as we round off? We were intending to spend only 1 hour, so we don't want to take any more of your time than we had said we would. So I hope that it has been of benefit to you. If you have any further questions, please email them, or we would. I wonder if, yes, so let me leave you our email address, and then we can keep in touch with you. We just, 1 second. So that's one that you can use to reach out to us, and then we can tell you then when the next sessions will be. But if you have any questions, we pop your questions in there, and we would be able to answer you as much as we can. Okay, any further comments or questions? Thank you, Bassey. As usual, fantastic. So thank you. Absolutely. Much appreciation to you, from myself and from everybody, the team at HGA, and of course, everybody in the room. I'm sure they extend their deep appreciation for all the time you spent. So on that note, Bassey, is there anything else you want to say?
No, just thank everyone for joining. Thank you for the invite, Toluwani. Thanks that I'm able to share my experience and knowledge, and we'll come back with more content based on the question I wasn't able to answer, and hope that gives value to people.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that.
Yeah.
So it's bye from us. God bless.
Thanks.